The Swiss Business Hub is really the trade and investment agency of the Swiss government. So our parent organization is called Switzerland Global Enterprise. We have really two divisions. One is trade, and we help Swiss companies do business in the United States. And then the team that I'm on is the Invest team, where we help North American companies who are interested in expanding to Switzerland. Most of the time I'm promoting the innovation ecosystem in Switzerland. So I'm from Nebraska originally, and I went to high school in Montana, which are two relatively rural areas. Because I didn't have a lot of these urban solutions growing up, that's why I really appreciated them when I started living in Europe or on the East Coast of the US. I worked in economic development, which is kind of general, right? You deal with a lot of different topics. And I started to realize that I really liked transport. In 2017, I moved back to Barcelona, and I started working with the Transport Research Center. That's when I really got to deep dive in transport innovation and livability of cities. Also, I was living in a smart city. What I realized is that in working on a project with the South Koreans, that they really enhanced the life of the people in Seoul. And Seoul is this mega city, right? By transport reforms, by some of these smart city reforms. But the real aha moment came when I was at a transport event and I was speaking to someone from Mexico, and they told me about the problems they have with transport and lack of equity and lack of reliability. And these were all things that had been resolved in Seoul. And that's really where the idea came about. I mean, I've always had a close relationship with South Korea, but that's really where it came about. And then working with Switzerland, well, it's just magnified because it's a smart country. Switzerland's a smart country. What we're trying to do is broaden the conversation around smart city development. So the book is really like the history of Seoul as Seoul's development into a smart city. What we really want to show is how leadership in Seoul took this kind of chaotic, enormous megacity, and they made it livable. They developed these urban interventions that then enabled people to grow and prosper. And I think that's something we don't think about nearly as much, and people don't think about in their day-to-day how much transport actually does affect their lives. We can't rely on city government solely. We can't rely on academia solely. We can't rely on the private sector. Especially like in the States, we see that a lot. We're relying pretty heavily on the private sector to do some of these things. And that's never going to work. It has to be a broad-based approach, and people have to be involved. And it's not just about finding the solutions, but it's about implementing the changes. And so everybody has to be involved, and we have to have a kind of a cross-sectoral collaboration. I mean, the hope is that it maybe gets people thinking about urban interventions and also maybe inspires other cities. Because we realized, especially working with transport economists and transport engineers, they have brilliant research, but sometimes it's not very readable. Even like people who work in city government, maybe they're not a trained engineer. Maybe they're not going to get through those reports, but they can get through a story. So my next book I already have planned is about how public transportation can save the world.